Okay, so we're doing the SI2 intro for new principals and new steering team members, and my name is Sue Reynolds. I'm president of the American Student Achievement Institute. So here's the topics that we'll be talking about today. We'll do an introduction, both just real quick to what is ASAI, the American Student Achievement Institute, and then more specifically, what is SI2. We'll go over the vision to action processes that we use with schools. It's a data-driven process that starts out with a vision and leads to action. And then we'll look at the local discussions that you'll be having in the coming year, and then our organizational structure, and then the support that we provide for your leadership team, or we call it a steering team, in your building as you go through this year. So, okay, so let's start out with that. What is ASAI? So we are the American Student Achievement Institute. We are a nonprofit. We were founded in '96, so we've been around 20 years now, which is kind of exciting. We incorporated in 2000. We're located in Bloomington, Indiana, although we have a virtual office with many of our staff members, and our staff member that's working with you, Tina Weissman, is actually located in Otwell, Indiana, in the southern part of the state. So, so we're all over the place, but we have a physical office in Bloomington. Our mission is really simple. It's to raise student achievement and close achievement gaps, but our expertise is in data-driven systemic change. So we're changing cultures in communities and schools, and we're using data to do that. We also think we have some expertise in creating grassroots movements. We've worked with hundreds of schools in Indiana to look at raising student achievement, not because there's been an outside mandate that says that we have to, but because we're working with a bunch of schools that love kids and they want to raise achievement because they understand what students need to be successful in their futures. So, so we work very kind of quietly and sometimes under people's radar, working with schools to help them improve. So we started with an initiative from Lilly Endowment back in the 1990s, so it's been quite a while. Lilly wanted to find out what would happen if business leaders taught educators about how much academic rigor was needed to succeed in the global economy, and then how to use data to drive systemic change. So it's 2016, and you know we're still having that conversation with business leaders who would like to see academic rigor improve. So that discussion's been going on for quite a while, and I feel very blessed that my high school was able to be involved in that conversation a bunch of years ago in 1990. And as a result, our school raised expectations. We increased the percentage passing rigorous math and science courses, and we also significantly increased the percentage of students who were accepted into post-secondary. We also closed achievement gaps between our paid lunch students and our free and reduced lunch students. So it's a process that started out as kind of a partnership between business and schools. There were 6 schools originally that got involved with this, and in mine in Trafalgar, Indian Creek High School was one of them. So after that initiative, we started sharing what we had learned as educators with other schools, and it was just kind of a hobby. We did it for fun in the summers. But then we formalized the process into what we now call vision to action. So incorporated in 2000, we were very pleased that Lumina Foundation provided us with some bridge funding so that we could quit our jobs. At the time I was working for the Department of Education as a consultant, and we all quit our jobs then and came in to work full-time for the nonprofit. So today we support about 400 steering teams in several different initiatives, and again our expertise is in the process of change, the process of improvement, using a data-driven, vision-based process. So here's our team. So you're working with several people to support you. The main person that will support that you'll get support from is Tina Weissman. She's one of our strategic planning specialists. She was a principal at an elementary school that was involved in SI2 for a bunch of years, and her school was our top gainer school for more years in a row than any other school. She really understands how to improve schools, so I'm really pleased that she's providing support for you. So then I'll be doing with your team the webinars and the training, but then in between webinars, Tina will do all the follow-up and review and the monitoring and the support for your steering team as you go along. So then, what is SI2? So here's what you're involved in. I wanted to just give you a couple of ideas about what SI2 is based on, kind of our philosophical approach to change. So the first thing is a concept called the movement approach to educational reform is developed by Parker Palmer, who's one of my heroes. And Parker says that change starts initially with one person, and my guess is that there was, one person at your school who decided that SI2 and raising achievement and reaching all kids was a good idea, and they talked to others and got them on board, and at that point you had a small group of people with mutual support, and then they recruited the support of others, and eventually, school improvement in your community became a public issue. We certainly, in our process, you'll see how our mutual support step has been putting together your steering team, and then when we bring in the community council, the school improvement council, that then turns this into a public issue. And then Parker says that as you continue to have discussions as a public issue, then eventually you'll get cultural change. So all of our work, our organizational structure, the discussions we have with your community is all leading to cultural change, so that you're developing a culture that is committed to and is really dedicated to raising student achievement for all kids. It's not just the principal who's dedicated to that, or just the teachers. It's the parents, the students, the teachers, the businesses in the community. It's everybody. So you'll see as we talk about our process and our organizational structure how we've designed all of that around this belief. And then the other thing that I wanted to just point out is, so as you listen today to our process in our organizational structure, I think you'll see some of this embedded as well. And that is that basically we have this thing that we call the change formula. And the change formula is simply that in order for you to have change in your school, improvement in your school, there has to be some dissatisfaction with the status quo. There has to be some vision or a dream for how you would like things to be. There has to be some knowledge of what are the next few steps. How do we get from this situation that we don't especially like to this dream that we have that we do like? What are my next few steps? There has to be some belief in yourself as change makers, that you have the ability to bring about change. And in all of our training, that's kind of what we're doing is teaching the people on your steering team to be change makers and to have, believe and have confidence in themselves as change makers in your school. It's also why we don't come to your school to do training or to lead discussions for you, that we're trying to develop those experts in systems change, data-driven systems change in your school so that they can run with this process. And then finally, all of that has to overcome resistance in order for change to happen. So as we go through our discussions with your steering team, we'll always be talking about, okay, in our next step, is there going to be resistance from folks? Probably. What is it going to sound like? What are they afraid of losing? And how can you address it before it happens so that the resistance isn't likely to hold you back? And you'll see that, all of those things, dissatisfaction, vision, knowledge of the first few steps, belief in yourself, that has to overcome resistance or change will never happen. So again, as we go through the process today and the organizational structure, you'll see these things built into our work. Okay, so SI2 is not a one-size-fits-all model. So, and sometimes this is a little frustrating for schools because the leadership team will come in and they'll expect us to tell them what to do. And quite frankly, we don't know what to do in your school because it's different in every single school. We don't believe that there is a one-size-fits-all model. So what SI2 is a discovery process. It's a process that your school, your teachers, your students, your community, it's a process that everyone goes through to discover what's going to work the best in your school to raise student achievement. And I'll go through the steps in that process in just a sec. Oops, I skipped a couple slides there. Okay. So just wanted to point out that we have all kinds of schools in SI2. There's urban schools, rural schools, elementary, high school. We have some very low achieving schools. We have some very high achieving schools. We have some very poor schools, some very affluent schools, and all different ethnic and minority levels. So the reason SI2 works in all settings is because it's not a model. It's not a one-size-fits-all model. It's a process where you're going to discover what you need to do in your schools to raise achievement. So what do folks say about SI2? Just a little bit of testimony. Back when we first started getting organized, people were learning about our schools and then looking into us, and the Council of Chief State School Officers, so these are all the superintendent of public schools from all the states, they did a policy brief on school improvement. This was 10 years ago. And they wrote about our work. We were one of 8 initiatives that they wrote about. And again, that last sentence there, that the hallmark of this process is embracing working through resistance. So that's where we were pleased that they picked that out. The Annie E. Casey Foundation does a lot of work with involving families and communities with schools. And again, they discovered some of our schools and realized that the schools were having some really meaningful discussions about things that would impact student achievement. In other words, it wasn't just families baking cookies for the schools, but the families were really digging into the discussions about curriculum and instruction. And so they did a policy paper on connecting schools and families and communities and wrote about our work. And again, that was about 9 years ago as we were first starting to really crystallize our process. Pathways to College Network, this was again, when we were first starting and people were starting to pay attention to us. They really focused on that our process was research-based, and that it was, at the time, was pretty new, and that people were just beginning to focus on that, and the fact that we were using data to see if the interventions that our schools were working were making a difference, they picked up on that. Former Governor Daniels was the opening keynote speaker at one of our conferences, and before he spoke, he had an opportunity to have lunch with 8 or 9 of our principals from our schools, and he got up and he put his written remarks down on the podium, and he just looked at the group and he said, "I am fascinated by SI2." And then at the close of his remarks, he said, "Tell other schools in your districts to join SI2." He was really impressed, he told us, with the fact that the educators in our schools were having really meaningful discussions about what it took to be successful in a global economy, and then how they could help all students develop that knowledge and skills. So, okay. Back when the Education Roundtable had a newsletter, there was another article, ASAI is making remarkable progress in Indiana schools. Some participant testimony. I was really pleased. We worked with all of the IPS schools, so 63 of them, and as you may know, we incorporate all the different components of Title I school-wide and Title I tasks into our process, because we know that our schools have to meet those outside expectations. Minetta Richardson, who was the Title I program administrator at the time, said that because of our process, that their district had not been cited for any major compliance issues from any of their audits, and that was a first for IPS. A lot of times their money, their Title I money, was held up because there were so many compliance issues, but when they were working with SI2, that didn't happen. So really, we were really pleased with that. More recently, the Indiana Association of School Principals last April published an article about SI2 that Steve Morris, the superintendent from Lanesville Community Schools, wrote. And Steve talks about how SI2 was working in the Lanesville school, that they were developing a culture that supports high achievement, and that they had experienced an upward trend in the percentage of students passing on state tests. All of the schools in Lanesville are participants in SI2, and it's been really fun for us to watch their data increase year to year. So appreciate him writing that article in the Principals Association Indianagram. So if I were in your shoes, I'd be saying, you know, that's nice that all these people have said nice things about SI2, but does it work? So here's just a little bit of data. This was data from a gentleman that did his dissertation on us, and again in our early years, but he wanted to see if SI2 made a difference on the increase in the percentage of passing I-STEP tests from year to year. And I think this is really notable data. What he's saying here is in the first year of SI2, there's not really much of a difference in the increase in presenting I-STEP tests. And that makes sense because this is a planning year for us. But as time goes on, you can see that we start to have bigger gains in achievement than non-SI2 schools. So, and you can see that after 2 years of implementing the interventions in his study, that there really was a significant difference in the gains in the percentage of passing I-STEP tests. So this data is from a few years ago, 2011. We did a study in-house that looked at, again, increases in the percentage of passing I-STEP and ECA tests. And we looked at SI2 schools compared to all schools in the state over a 3-year period, and we got our data from the DOE website. And we found that the increase was 42% higher in SI2 schools. So this made us really happy that, you know, our work and your work was making a difference for kids. So, okay, so that's the data. And Tina, if people are typing in questions, feel free to jump in when I get to these blue slides and we'll take them. Okay, so let's look at the process. So here's what your school is doing or has been doing. So the first thing that we did with your school was we created an organizational structure. We got ready. So you put together a steering team. So your school now has a steering team. We delegated tasks among the steering team members so that not everybody had to do everything. So we helped you get organized in terms of who was going to do what. And then you started collecting data, and you collected data, both achievement data and also what we call root cause data, but you looked at data that would help you identify all the things that could be getting in the way of achievement in your school. So that was getting ready. And then we looked at the organizational structure and then went into an introduction where we helped the steering team and the council understand what SI2 was all about. Also in that introduction, we talked heavily about global economics and really tried to help, or you tried to help your council understand that if students were going to be successful in a global economy, that academic rigor was a no-brainer, that achievement had to go up in order for your students to be able to take high-skill, high-wage jobs. So that was part of this discussion, as well as really talking with your community about global economics. And the idea is that if you love the kids in your community and you understand global economics, then raising student achievement is a no-brainer. And what we're really trying to bring across here is that raising student achievement is not about meeting some state expectation from the Department of Education or anyone else. It's really just about loving kids. And if we love kids and we understand global economics, then this is really a no-brainer. We also, you'll see in a minute, it really involved your local economic development folks and your local businesses in this discussion. And we think it's really healthy for your local business folks to be talking with educators about, yeah, this is really true. We can't fill, we have, we have high unemployment in our community, and we have 300 job openings that we can't fill locally because the folks don't have the skills that they need to take those jobs. So yeah, so that was a big part of that discussion. Then we went to visioning, and that discussion was, we asked your community people and your students and your teachers, everybody. We asked everybody, what's your dream? What if you could close your eyes and picture the dream school, the dream community, what would it look like? We really believe in dreaming. We think that no one would ever get to the top of Mount Everest if they couldn't picture themselves doing that. People that climb Mount Everest don't get there just by wandering around. So we really needed to spend some time talking about, okay, locally, what is our dream? And who do we have those dreams for? Is it just, affluent white kids? Is it just kids who are motivated? Or do we have dreams for every single kid in our building? So that was a big discussion. Then we looked at goals, and the goals are data points that are a step between where you currently are and that dream data. So we create two different levels of goals. The primary areas for improvement are very broad goals, like we're going to improve language arts, ISTEP, just very, very broad. Broad goals we find aren't really helpful because they don't start to fine-tune your interventions. So then we go down to very specific goals that we call SMART goals, and those goals will be very specific. They'll say, okay, our students who are mastering ratios on ISTEP, right now the data's here. A year from now we want to make it here. So the SMART goals are very specific goals, and the council, the steering team, the school, you guys commit to reaching those goals and to doing whatever it takes to get to those goals. And again, so it's really self-accountability. We think that that's really important, and so whatever you say those SMART goals are, I mean, you're committing to yourselves and to us and your parents and your students that you're going to reach those goals and figure out what you got to do to get there, and then do those things so you can get there. So that's a goal step. Then once we have those goals set, let's say well, let's go back to the ratios. Let's say you're increasing the percentage of 7th graders who master ratios to X point by in the next year. Then we want to go back and we want to go to the next step and figure out, well, what's getting in the way of those goals? So why aren't kids mastering ratios? And you'll look at all kinds of data. You'll look at broad data. You'll look at specific data to help you figure that out. So broad data might be things like, oh, our attendance rate is awful. No wonder kids aren't mastering ratios and anything else because they're not coming to school. Or it might be very specific root causes like, oh, we don't teach ratios. No wonder the kids aren't mastering ratios. Okay, let's add units to introduce and reinforce ratios in the 7th grade math curriculum. So, or we don't provide extra help that would cover ratios or whatever. So that root cause step is you studying data and having discussions to figure out for each of your SMART goals what's getting in the way. This is where it becomes very targeted. A lot of school improvement processes skip this step, and what's getting in the way is based on hunches, whereas we are looking at data to help you understand what's getting in the way. So, and we'll help you collect that data. Okay, so once you know what's getting in the way, then the next step is, okay, what are we going to do about it? Well, what's getting in the way is we have poor attendance. Okay, what are we going to do about it? What's getting in the way is we don't teach ratios. Okay, what are we going to do about it? Those we call interventions, and they're just the fixes. We have a goal, we know what's getting in the way, now what are we going to do about it? So that's interventions, and that also will be a discussion with the council, with your parents, with all the students. The students will give you amazing suggestions here for what you should do to help them learn. is just really rich. So, okay, and then once we know what you're going to do, then the last step is preparation. And preparation is big on professional development. So let's go back to the ratios example. If we're saying, okay, our intervention is going to be that our 7th grade teachers are going to teach ratios, and our 7th grade teachers don't know how to teach ratios, I can imagine that, but let's say they didn't, then we would need professional development to teach them how to teach that unit. So preparation is looking at what does everybody need in order to make sure that those interventions are a home run, that we really implement them well. So we're going to look at professional development. We'll look at creating a calendar so everything goes into place nicely. And then sometimes it's just resource procurement. They're going to need lesson plans. Well, let's go find lesson plans. They're going to need manipulatives to work with math to teach ratios. Well, let's go purchase manipulatives. Oh, we don't have any money. Well, let's go do some fundraising. So, so that preparation step is just all the stuff you have to do to make sure those interventions are really implemented with integrity. So, okay, so that's kind of the process. It is also a continuous improvement process. So all of you that are participating at least 30 minutes before webinar time, when I looked at the enrollment list for the webinar, all of you are either a Cycle 2 school or a Cycle 3 school. So I think that North Newton, the last time I looked, you're a Cycle 2, you've just been in your first year and now you're coming into your second year. And then everybody else, we kind of did a restart with SI2 a couple of years ago, and you're in Cycle 3. So everybody's using the same curriculum right now, and what you are is an annual update. You might also see this written as Update 1 and Update 2. So you're an annual update, and so what we're doing with you this coming year is you're collecting new student data, and then we're just going to go through and say, does your school improvement plan still make sense? Are your goals still logical, or do you need to change your goals? Are your force fields or your root causes, are they still logical? Are your interventions still logical? Most schools end up tweaking, and sometimes, like if you reach a goal, you might just decide to drop it and do something totally different. So we spend time updating and then preparing to implement the updated goals and interventions. So that's what everybody's getting ready to do. Okay, Tina, I'm going to pause real quickly. Any questions there you want to jump in and just let me know? I don't want to go on if there's questions.
Okay, there are no questions, and I just sent Kelly an email real quick, reminded him he is a startup.
Okay, okay, right. So he'll be going into Update 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so the local school improvement discussion, what we have is a steering team, and then that steering team is going to have that discussion with discussions with an improvement council. So your council is a big group. We ask you to, oops, forgot to turn my phone off. We ask you to invite all teachers, all parents, and all community members to be part of the council. So it's an open group. And we strongly encourage you to the point of requiring all teachers to be involved, because we don't want our teachers to feel that any of this is being done to them. We want every teacher in the building to be part of this discussion, so all teachers are involved in the council. So the council has 5 discussions, and the first one as a Cycle 1, Cycle 2 school, the first one's going to happen in September, and this discussion, you're just going to get your interventions that you've planned for this year kicked off. The discussion is going to be what can each person do to make each of the interventions successful. So everybody will log into our system, the discussion will be online, and people will say, well, I can do this to help that intervention, or I can do this to help this intervention. Then in December, We'll have the council look at what evidence are we seeing that the interventions are making a difference. This gives us a chance to make some in-flight adjustments if the intervention isn't working, the way that we thought it was. So let's say your intervention was that your 7th grade teachers were going to do 3 units or 3 lessons on ratios, and we get to December and we discover that it didn't get done. Well, now we have time to do some in-flight adjustments. Or they did the 3 and we discovered that wasn't enough based on classroom assessments. That wasn't enough to have kids master ratios. So now I can do some in-flight work. Okay, so that's in December, and then in January we'll update your goals. We'll have new student data, update goals. In February update your root causes, and in March we'll update your interventions. So, okay. Then, if you've not been on our online system, there are discussion pages online. So you have a choice for your local discussions. You can either get people together and have the discussions face-to-face, which would be our preference for you doing that. We think that the discussion is much richer when everybody can just talk. However, we know that time is at a premium. So rather than coming to meetings, another option is that you can have those discussions online. And it works a lot like Facebook. We'll put a prompt up, so here's what to do before the discussion. Then there'll be a video that the council members watch, and then the questions will appear. So in this case, ideally, what do all students deserve in order to be successful? And then you can see people have made comments just like Facebook, and you show the 10 most recent or view all responses. People can respond to other people's statements. So it's just an online discussion. The other thing that people can do is they can agree with statements. So as a steering team, this allows your steering team to kind of see where the discussion's going, and then also that that they have how many people have agreed with different points that came up. So, okay, so I guess the big point on this slide is that you have an option for your discussions. They can be face-to-face, which would be our preference. We find that schools that do that really are more successful because the discussion is so rich, or an online discussion. Okay, then another group, so that was the community council, including all the teachers. Another group is your student body. And what we do with that is we have the same discussions. We send out a prompt to the students. So you can see, in this case, the prompt that the students were discussing with All Students Deserve. We like these discussions to be student-led. A lot of time the teachers will even kind of stand out in the doorway so that they're there for disciplinary purposes, but it's really the whole thing is student-led. So maybe it's a student council, or it's a stats class, or somebody that is going around facilitating the discussions, and we provide some training tools for the student facilitators in how to do that. So and then all the student prompts are combined and provided for the council to look at so that they can consider what the students said as well. Okay, so there's the discussion topics, and then the steering team. So who's leading this? Who's leading these discussions? Who's creating the documents that come out of the discussions, and who's determining what the council wants to be your goals? So that's the steering team. The steering team are worker bees. Your steering team is made up of the principal, 2 teachers, a counselor, a parent, and a representative of economic development. And in red on the bottom of the slide is critically important. These are not the leaders of school improvement. They don't lead. They're the managers of school improvement. That's why we don't call this group a leadership team. It's a steering team. So it's actually the council that are the decision makers, and the steering team are just they're the ones that are facilitating the process. So they're improvement managers. We also share the work on the steering team, and a lot of schools that we've worked with have said that they really like this because we create their organizational structure for them. But you can see we have 6 people on the steering team, so we divvy up the work 6 ways. One person is just responsible for achievement data collection, another person just that root cause data collection. Another person is responsible for leading the council discussions. Another one's responsible for council, helping the council reach consensus, and then the student body discussions, and then helping everybody develop their interventions. So we're divvy up the work. If you're new to your steering team, I would suggest, if you haven't done it already, talk to your other steering team members and find out what your point position is going to be. If your point position is the council discussions, that's all you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about the data part at all. So something to think about, and if you need some help with like the best way to assign these point positions, if you're making a lot of changes, talk to Tina, and Tina would be able to help you think through that. Okay, then here's the support that we provide. So one is the training. We'll provide 6 trainings for your steering team. They all happen as webinars. We used to do them face-to-face, but we've discovered that schools just don't have the funding for mileage or time out of the buildings like they used to. So it's all via interactive webinars. And then here are the dates that are coming up for this year. So the 2 in blue are our first semester dates when we're kicking off this year's interventions. And then the 4 in green are next semester's dates when we're creating that would be your 17-18 school improvement plan. So, okay. So we also provide on-call support, and my guess is you probably have already talked with Tina, but we feel very strongly about providing support when you need it. So Tina is there at the phone, that as soon as you call, if she's not on the phone with another school, she'll be able to pick up and talk with you. And if she is on the phone with another school, she'll call you back immediately. So we really hope, and we're very committed to providing on-call support, high-quality on-call support when you need it. And if that's ever not the case, please call me. But we've been working with Tina for a long, long time, and I've never heard anything but praise about her service for schools. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with her responsiveness in supporting you. We like to think of Tina as a member of your steering team. And as I mentioned, she also has just tons of expertise in school improvement. So, I mean, call her with questions, call and schedule a consultation with her. Give her a call and say, can you block out, an hour and a half to really talk with me about this part of the process and help me look at my data and, let me run the ideas by you. So use her any way that would help you. So, okay. Then we also have an online system that is really just a collection of management tools. So I want to show you those real quickly. When you log into our system, your school will have a unique page that looks like this. And the tabs that you'll use the most are these 3. The SIP uses is where you've already told us how you plan to use your school improvement plan. And every time you tell us something different, that customizes the system. So if you tell us that you're a Title I school, the system gets customized for that. If you tell us that you're a focus or priority school, the system gets customized. And then the process page I'm going to go over today, and then the manual. These are the 3 big tabs. The rest of these are kind of shortcuts, but these are the ones that you'll use the most. So I was just mentioning this. This is the uses page where you'll check, different things. If you're saying I'm going to use my school improvement plan to meet the requirements of PL 221, as soon as you click that, it customizes the system. Title I, and then for different parts of DOE's requirements, we ask you to tell us these things so we can check to make sure that you have goals for different groups and interventions for different groups. And the system also will prompt you. It'll say, oops, you've got, you have not met AMO for this group, and you don't have any, you haven't addressed that in your school improvement plan. So the system prompts you to make sure that you've met all of the requirements. Okay, so this is the manual. And so there's all kinds of things to help you. There's examples and templates and tools and just all kinds of stuff. When you get ready for your discussions, there's things you'll need to have those discussions. So that's the steering team manual. And then there's the process page, which we try to design this like a cookie recipe. do this first, then do this, then do this. So in getting organized, you can see, in the beginning, this is what your team did. They read an introduction, they watched a webcast, they participated in an online discussion, they entered SIP uses, they entered their steering team members. So this, you just start at the top and you work your way down, and every time you do a step, you just check it off. So it's very, I think, organized. We get a lot of compliments from schools about this page and how it helps them work through the process. Also, I wanted to show you, let's just look at one of these rows. Let's see. Enter steering team members, that's going to build the steering team roster. So in these columns, here's where you would enter it. There's where you get the report out after it's entered. And then on this button, when you click this, it sends the work to Tina for Tina to look at against our rubric. And then she will give you information back, meets criteria, and then some special notes if there's notes. Or sometimes she'll write you a little message and this will be linked and you click that and her message to you will pop up. So this could also say needs revision if you haven't met somebody's criteria, or if we think you're going down a road that's not going to raise student achievement in your school, we'll ask you to revise something. Okay, so that's the process page. And yeah, those are the, sorry, I forgot I had slides on those. Okay, so a couple random spotlights in our system. A lot of the achievement data is already auto-populated into your system. We've pulled data off of DOE's website. So anytime we can get public data, we'll drop it into your website for you so that you don't have to retype everything. And just a note too that if there's a group that has less than 10 students in it, we don't report the data because of confidentiality reasons. Okay, then we also, this is kind of a unique tool. We have a tool where you can create a data table. So if you use NWEA or Terra Nova or a NAEP assessment, or even maybe an assessment that your teachers created, maybe the rainbow ratios assessment, you can just start to create a table, chart title, rainbow ratios assessment, student group, all 7th graders, benchmark, 90%, whatever you're trying to do. And that could be part of your school improvement plan. So we also have surveys that your schools have already given. We only survey every 3 years. So, so every 3rd year you'll survey again. But this is kind of what the survey looks like. We survey students and parents and community members and teachers. So there's 4 different versions, and this you happen to be looking at questions about expectations. So this is the student survey. So question 1 says, I expect to earn the Indiana Core 40 diploma. On the teacher survey, it would say, I expect almost all students to earn the Indiana Core 40 diploma. On the parent one, it says, I expect my child to earn. So it really, we're getting an idea about expectations, and then later you'll say, oh, are expectations one of the things that's getting in the way? Is that a root cause? So, okay, but we only do that every 3 years. So the data that you look at will be either last year's data or a couple of years old if you're if you're the Update 1 schools. Okay. Another little, just kind of jumping around in our system, after you get all the interventions in, the system will automatically print out a calendar that will tell you what needs to be done when in order to implement the interventions with integrity. So you'll see the activity, who's going to do it, and then why you're doing it, or what intervention it aligns with. So this is also, I think this is one of the strengths of our system, is our crosswalk reports. This really gives you a chance to assess the overall strength of your school improvement plan. So just to point this one out, and there's several of these, there's maybe 6 or 7 that you look at all together when we're looking at the strength of your interventions. But here's your interventions or your strategies over here on the right, or on the top. And then in this case, we're doing a crosswalk with the turnaround principles. So school leadership, school climate and culture, effective instruction. So as this school's developing its school improvement plan, let's say this was a priority school where they have to address all of the turnaround principles, they'd be looking down and saying, oh, we're hitting them all, but ooh, these two we're kind of missing. So that would give them kind of a heads up, oh, we better start looking at interventions in these areas as well. I think it's really interesting. We have all schools do this. I think it's really interesting. For example, we might have a school that has done a lot in terms of school leadership, but we can see that they're not doing anything with effective instruction. And of course, we don't think achievement will go up unless we change instruction. So that may be a time like when Tina would call and say, "Gosh, have you noticed you're not doing anything with instruction?" So all of these crosswalk reports help us to look at the strength of your interventions and where your interventions are going, what they're trying to do, and it helps you and us really look at the strength of your school improvement plan as a whole. And again, you don't have to create these reports. When you're entering the interventions, you just check some different things, like you'll check a principle, or you'll check um, um, a root cause or whatever, and then these reports just pop out. You don't have to create them. So, okay. And then when you're ready to submit your school improvement plan to DOE, I wanted to show you how that works. It's really simple. So at the end of the process, after Tina has said that everything meets criteria, then these links will become hot. And for all of our schools, you can simply download a school improvement plan. So you click that button and down it comes to you. The system has put narrative in. It has taken your goals and your interventions and dropped it into the report, so it's all ready to go. So you just download it and then you upload it to DOE on their website, and this link right here will take you directly to their website. So the whole thing, once you finish the process, the whole submission to DOE takes less than 5 minutes. Download it, upload it. It's really simple. Also, other thing with your school improvement plan, our organization is an approved school improvement planning provider by the Department of Ed. And what that means to you is that if we approve your school improvement plan, DOE is not going to give it a second read. They know that we're reading on their behalf, and that if we say you've met all the requirements of PL 221, then they feel that there's no need for them to review your school improvement plan. So our schools really like that because, we're looking at your plan like every week. So there's no surprises at the end. At the end, you know that you're approved by us, and therefore you'll be approved by DOE. So, okay, and then if your school is a focus or priority school, DOE also asks you to turn in a student achievement plan. So this is only for focus and priority schools. The student achievement plan is really the same thing as the school improvement plan. When you went through the process, if you told us that you were a focused priority school, the system prompted you to create different interventions to put in that align with the turnaround principles. But the reports are pretty much the same. We're using DOE language. That's why we call strategies interventions, because DOE calls them interventions. That's why we use the term root cause instead of force field analysis, because DOE uses the term root cause. So we align our language with DOE, Indiana DOE. We also align the report with Indiana DOE. So this report, when it prints out, it's going to print out in the template that DOE uses. So the screen here is showing you a school that is not focus or priority, and therefore these two lines are not hot. That's why they're gray. If this were a focus or priority school, these would be blue, and you would just download your student achievement plan, and then you would send it as an email attachment to your DOE outreach coordinator, and if you click that button, it gives you everybody's email addresses. So again, very, very easy. Once you finish the process, just download and send. So, okay. One other thing that we have the ability to do, and schools told us they thought it would be cool, the system will create a public website for your school improvement plan. So this is the one from Columbia Middle School, and they can put a link to this page onto their school's public page, and then anybody in the community could download their school improvement plan, or they could just click on the different components of the school improvement plan and see these reports. So you don't have to do this. It's not required. We just have a tool that if you want to create a website for your school improvement plan, you can do that. Okay, Tina, any questions?
None.
Okay. So just have a few more minutes left. I think we're going to be able to finish up right on time. So submission reviews. Just a reminder that when you complete work, when your steering team has completed work, you're going to submit it to Tina, and you can see the dates are here, and you use that little submit button, just send it to her. And then Tina will put comments in. She'll give it a status, and then she'll put comments in. So the rubric items will always be available on our website at all, so you'll know exactly what Tina's looking for. And then this is what it looks like when you open this up. So when Tina reviews it, this is the one for steering team. Did you include a principal on the steering team? Yes. Do you have at least 2 teachers? Yes. So she's checking it off, and then she's putting in possibly some comments saying, you know, great job, or, oh, you know, we saw that the business person didn't talk very much at your last meeting. Let's try to pull them into the discussion a little bit more, or whatever. So, okay, recognition, we do give a top gainer award for schools that are raising the percentage of students who pass state tests. And yeah, that's it. So that was we are going to finish on time. So let me pause here. There's Tina's phone number and her email address. So if you have questions, please jump in. And if you think of a question tomorrow, just call Tina. We have a rule that we call the 5-minute rule, although Tina has changed it to the 5-second rule. And that is, if you are ever confused for 5 minutes or 5 seconds, you are required to call Tina. We've all been educators. We know that you're trying to do this, you know, work in your passing period or your lunch or your prep period. And we know you don't have 3 days to wait for somebody to return your call. So we want to be here when you need us. So call Tina. Don't spend time being confused. Just call her right away. So, okay. Tina, anybody have questions?
There aren't any questions, but maybe just a heads up for those who are on returning steering teams that the system will be turning over. You might go into that and what can be changed and what can't be changed.
Okay. We have not turned over the system yet, and we, as you know, the start date on creating 16-17 school improvement plans because of DOE's timeline last year was very. Now my other phone is ringing. Oh, somebody got it. Okay. Yeah, so our schools that just got started with us couldn't start with us until after March 1st because of DOE's postponing of the deadline for the 15-16 school improvement plan until March 1st. So they're still working on their school improvement plans for the coming year, and won't finish up until right before the September 30th deadline or October 1st deadline. So we have to leave the system in its 2015-16 mode until probably about October 15th. So that means that you won't be able to enter anything into the system related to your 17-18 school improvement plan until after October, probably 15th-ish. So that doesn't mean that you can't have discussions. It just means that we're not going to be entering anything into the system until after we tell you that we've turned the system over, which we anticipate will be somewhere in the middle of October. So watch for an email from us. Yeah, good point, Tina. Tina, is there anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so. It's obviously the administrators. I had talked to Amy about that, and you, if you haven't already, you can go ahead and put your name in on the steering team, and then that way you'll be assured to receive all of the emails and the updates, and that is really important that you get that information.
Okay. Okay, good point. So the one thing that you can edit right now when we would like you to edit is your steering team roster. So if you're a new principal or a new steering team member, we want to make sure, as Tina said, that your name gets into the steering team roster so that our system will start including you with emails. And the turnover doesn't impact that, because when we turn over, the steering team just gets carried forward, so that will be okay. So good point. What else, Tina? Is there other things that I didn't touch on that they might need to know?
No, I think that's really it. And I was checking the people who are in attendance, and you're very fortunate in the fact that you do have good, strong steering teams.
Good.
And you're going to learn a lot from each other. And getting back to that 5-second rule, we do sincerely mean that, because that's part of what my job is. And if you have any questions about anything as far as the process, how it works, how it would be comparable to something we've done in the past, or anything that you see on an update or whatever, just call. Just pick up the phone and call. I work from 8 until 2 Eastern Time, that I have an answering machine. So I will be happy to go through any of this with you. I really like this process, so I like to talk about it very much.
Mm-hmm. So, and that reminds me, Tina, one other service that we provide is that we actively monitor, which means that we're not just sitting here waiting for you to submit stuff to us and waiting for you to call us. We're opening up your system, we're monitoring, we're watching deadlines, and so if you start to fall behind, we'll call and say, oh gosh, we're noticing that you're behind. How can we help? We don't worry too much if you get 1 step behind, but if you start getting 2 steps behind, it means that the instruction is not coming at the teachable moment. So yeah, so try to keep up. That's really important, that you hit deadlines. And be patient with Tina, that if she calls to encourage you to catch up a little bit, we're not trying to be nags. We just know that schools that get behind end up either not completing, or they do inferior work. So we're wanting you to be successful. So we're actively monitoring what's going on in your school improvement plan. So, okay, anything else, Tina, before we close?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Call Tina, call Tina, call Tina, and we'll talk with you probably at our first training that we do for your steering team this year, which is coming up. So thanks, everyone.